Okay, we are live.
Yeah.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order. There were no citizen comments at this time. So the first thing on the agenda would be a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any questions or changes necessary? If not, motion by Savage, seconded by Myers. If there are no further questions, all those opposed?
Alright.
I mean, opposed, nay. My question, Jerry.
No, he meant it.
All right, first thing on the agenda, Fred Moore is here to discuss the continuity of operations. Fred, you want to come up?
He's here.
Where's he at? Yep. Oh,
You want me to do it out for you?
Yeah, there's, everybody gets one of,
Okay,
they're in bundles like that.
okay, I'll just let you start it.
Hi, everybody.
I did not.
If you'll recall, back in 2017, Ottawa was hit by tornado, and at that tornado, we lost our highway department and nursing home, and they had to reestablish their operations, and we, at that time, did not have any continuity plans in place. We have since, I believe through this committee, have worked on individual departments to establish continuity plans. If something happens, we can continue to provide governmental services. Talking with various people, the plans indicate that if my department were to be affected, I'm going to go to Southtown Mall and I'm going to run my operation out of Southtown Mall. Or I'm going to run to Bruce Township and run my operation out of Bruce Township Hall. The problem is we don't have agreements with any of these people that I'm aware of. My continuity plan for my agency, we have 2 agreements in place that if something were to happen with my building, I have a written agreement where I can establish my office and get things up and running probably within 3 hours. So what I'm here for today is to show you guys a class, free to the county. It's taxpayer funded through the Rural Domestic Preparedness Consortium. It's a group funded through the Department of Homeland Security. And it's an 8-hour class, and it talks about continuity planning. Along with continuity planning, it's more than just where you're going to go, right? What are you going to do? Who's in charge? If the sheriff is not here and the undersheriff is not here, who's in charge to relocate the sheriff's office? If Mr. Navarro is not at his office because he's vacationing in Florida someplace, who's in charge to reestablish the state's attorney's office, and who has the knowledge that this is where we're going? And this is what continuity planning is all about. So you got succession planning, like I was just discussing. There's a thing of delegation of authority. Sometimes delegation of authority is written into statute. Sometimes it's written into ordinance. In my case, if I'm not here, my delegation of authority automatically goes to my deputy director. Okay, and that's written in ordinance. So this class, what you have, first off, the first page, this page, is just the registration information for people that want to attend the class. The little packet that's stapled is the table of contents of the course content that will be discussed during those classes. And you'll see that there's more to just saying, I'm going to go here. You're going to go there, but do they have the proper power needs that you need? Do they have the proper IT infrastructure that you need? Is telework a possibility? can we telework instead of reconstituting an office someplace else? If so, what does that look like? And your continuity plan should explain that. What are your essential functions? What are the things that absolutely have to be done as a government department to continue providing the services to our citizens of the county? Goes into devolution. If you have to devolve government, right? I can't operate my emergency management agency because I was killed, my deputies in New Zealand, and my building is gone. So we have to devolve my department. Who are we going to assign those responsibilities to? Okay. So all this is worked out. All this should be in a continuity plan. And this course, as I said, is free for anybody to take. You guys all have copies of the registration. If you're more than welcome to attend the class. But what I'm looking for, I think, is a recommendation to come from the trust for elected and appointed department heads to encourage them to attend this class so that we can strengthen our continuity plans so that if we do have to, in the unfortunate incident, we do have to cease operations in a building, we can pick up operations and continue to serve the citizens. So that's my pitch. I'm just looking for support from the members of the trust so that I can put this out in email form to the department heads and elected officials and encourage their participation in the class. It's 8 hours. There's a lot of talk when we did these. When we talk about essential functions, there is a legal requirement of what an essential function is within the departments. An essential function isn't necessarily everything you do every day. Okay, there are essential functions are life safety, statutorily required, revenue generating, and the fourth one's escaping me since all of you are staring at me. But there's 4 essential functions that if it doesn't fall into one of those categories, it's not essential, then we don't have to provide that service at that point. We want to provide that service, but if we don't have the manpower, we don't have the facilities, it's something that we absolutely have to do right now. So that's what I'm looking for, is just your support and hopes to get department heads in the seats.
So Fred, you're asking us to write a letter to each department that recommending this?
What do you think, Melissa? Is that,
I mean, that's what we've done in the past.
Yeah,
We've had
in past, I think they've done like a memo format,
A memo
just where they
format.
sign and then you can send out the information, just saying that the trust is strongly recommending.
yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
We could work on it and then we can, if we have to do a signature on it.
Let's get a motion on it, by small, 6 by wires, that the trust do some form of recommendation to the department heads.
Is it for action?
No,
Not
that's for
final.
information.
No.
We can do a recommendation.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, you were recommending.
Yeah, we just
that.
do
As
that.
long as it's not final action, I think you can do it under the open meeting, because final action is for not, for zoning council information.
Tom, you have a question?
Yeah, are we spending money on this process? Are we gonna, what's the cost?
Cost is free to the government, to our government, to the county government. It's taxpayer funded at the federal level. So we will not be writing any checks to anybody to bring this class here.
No, but I mean, the next step as far as setting up these locations, that type of thing, are you gonna have to have some type of an emergency lease or something like that with these buildings that you're talking about using in case it would become necessary?
I've already established mine, Tom, and it didn't cost me anything. It's a intergovernmental agreement between me and the hospitals.
Yeah.
Because that's my alternate facility, would be the hospital. So it'd be the same, it'd be an intergovernmental agreement between Ottawa Township and whatever department decides they want to relocate their governmental operations out of. But I think it's important too that we need to get these continuity plans established and firmed up, because everything relies on something else, right? So IT's disaster recovery plan is depending upon knowing what the assessor's continuity plan is. If their continuity says that they need 3 terminals at their alternate location, then IT has to plan for how they're going to get the 3 terminals there. Does that make sense? Do they need 20 terminals like they have? I'm throwing numbers out, I don't know. Do they need 20 terminals, or can they get by and do their essential functions with 3? Because IT has to support them. They can't support them without knowing what's needed, right? Same thing with phones, telecommunications. You're going to have to relocate. How are we going to notify the public that the assessor's office is now at South Ottawa Township and their phone number is this? Are we going to go to cell phones, temporary cell phones? And we're going to have to get those numbers out. These are all things that need to be planned in advance so that when it happens, we know what we're doing. And if Mr. Navarro's not there, his second person knows this is what we got to do.
I just wanted to add a point to your whole process. Years ago, the IRS even had a radio set up outside of Ottawa here on Route 71, where they were going to be able to stay in contact in case of an emergency with their satellite offices in the area. So
they were planning on it.
They were planning. I don't know where that's.
And for the board members that know that I've gone out to training out in Maryland before, that underground facility that's there is actually a continuity location for the federal government. So it's something that we have to plan for, because government just doesn't stop on a rainy day, right? We have to continue to provide services. People are still going to get married. People are still going to expect zoning. People are still going to die, right? We still have to provide the services that we're required to provide. And it's better to have a plan beforehand so that we know when it happens. Here's the playbook.
Jill, you have a question?
Yeah, Fred, does each department have to go to a separate location? Like you're going to the hospital, do they?
They don't have to, Jill, but the thing is everybody has to know where everybody's going. Because if the assessor says they're going to South Ottawa Township and the recorder says they're going to South Ottawa Township and the coroner's going to South Ottawa Township, it's kind of full, right? It's like when the tornado happened, nursing home and highway both thought, well, we'll go to EMA and they both said, well, we'll use the basement boardroom as our alternate location. Well, there's not enough room for that for 2 departments down there, right? So we had to put one there and one was at my office. So it's important to know where these alternate locations are internally so that we're not overtaxing that.
So they'll be dispersed around the county then,
They
the alternate locations?
They potentially could be, yeah. Now, and I want to go back and say that the circuit clerk's office, they have their own continuity plan that's a confidential plan that we don't, I mean, I've seen the plan. I don't have a copy of it. I've seen the plan. So the circuit clerk's office is quasi-exempt. I think the Supreme Court requires them to have a plan, and theirs is already established. But each department should have one, because you don't know if you can find a big enough building to relocate everybody to. That centralizes government a little bit, but where are we going to find a big enough building to house all of?
Is this online, the whole class online?
No, the whole class is 8-hour instructor led, and it's at my building.
Oh, okay.
How many instructors come in, Fred, or where do they come from?
The lead instructor for this class is coming out of the Chicago suburbs. It's a peer of mine who I know. And then they usually bring one or two other instructors, and they come from across the country.
And you would recommend that a department that comes from whole 8 hours, they're
Yeah.
not just specific areas,
No,
it requires them to be here for the whole meeting.
they really should because of the table of contents that I've provided. There's so much involved, and this actually ends up in like a little tabletop discussion where, you know, Central City's government, I don't remember what the name of the government agency is, but we'll all break into breakout sessions and we'll start discussing, okay, our plan should have included this. We should have done that. So that we can take these best practices back to our departments and develop our plans accordingly.
Didn't we already come up with some kind of plan? I can't remember the acronym.
It was a COOP plan, continuity of operations, yeah. And this is building on that because, yeah, we all have COOP plans, right? Or most
We only got-
departments.
Yeah, we got to the point of where we were gonna relocate.
So part of it.
So every department, yeah, either we would have to decide as a whole where we wanna locate the mass, like Fred just said, versus the individual, like each of us trying to find a place. So that's kind of where we ended when Maureen had left. We were at the point where we tried to get them as completed as possible. But that relocation point is really where we're stopped at. Because we would have to figure out like the intergovernmental agreement stuff, that's where we have to.
And the COOP plan isn't, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Clear.
The COOP plan doesn't mean that all of government failed, right? Or that all of government's affected. It could be a broken pipe that's going above this building or this room here, and taking out HR. Okay, let's just say that it affected the board offices. Well, board offices still have to continue to work. So where are we going to put them while they're repairing just this portion of the building? It doesn't have to be a catastrophic event to activate a COOP plan. It could just be that the heat's out today, you know? So while they're repairing the boilers, where are we going to do our jobs at?
Fred, do cities have to have a continuity plan similar to, like, would Ottawa have a plan? Or is this only for county government?
No, everybody should have a plan.
All employers.
Federal government, down to local government, to the Walmarts, and I will tell you, Walmart does have a continuity plan, to the mom and pops. Everybody should have a plan on if this happens, what am I gonna do?
So my question would have been then, if you don't get 25, can you get Ottawa
Oh, yeah.
officials are they gonna be aware of this? In other words?
My plan is this, you'll notice the date is out into April, okay? In January or February of next year, I plan on presenting an emergency management 101 type class to newly elected officials. It would be everybody would be invited, you know, any elected official would be invited, and this would be discussed at that. It's already planned to be discussed in that, that's why the date is April. So yes, anybody, and then I want to give our departments first run at it, right? Because this class doesn't come around very often. So I want to give our departments first chance at it. So I'm holding off on posting this announcement until December 1st.
Is it limited to 25 or a minimum?
Minimum of 25, we can host up to 40. So come December 1st, it'll go out to IEMA Region 3, which is Northeast Illinois. It'll go down to Springfield, be posted on the state's training website. And then, like I said, we'll be discussing it in this seminar that I want to do for elected officials.
Is it limited to 40 only because of the physical,
Location of the building, yeah. I can only fit 40 in there safely.
unless you had a continuity plan to have it somewhere else?
Well, you're right, but both my facilities where I'm going hold about 25. So we're still kind of limited at about 40. Now, if there were to be a huge demand, I could look at going to IV and holding it in their technology center, and that holds up to 120, I think.
Anyone have any other questions for Fred? No, Fred, thank you. We'll definitely get a memo out to them.
Okay, I appreciate it.
I'll talk to you.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is the insurance renewal status. Mr. Nugent?
We sent Tony out on a mission back in August to get into the insurance market, find some competitive alternatives, especially given the fact that we were expecting increases from the insurers. And we're not done yet, but I wanted to bring the best option that Tony has so far to your attention, because it has significant savings for the county, both compared to the expiring program, but also compared to where we expect the incumbent's renewal to land. But it also has some changes in the processing of claims that we don't really have control over. So if you look at my memo, skip the memo and go to the second page so I can focus on the cost part of this first. The option that Tony has is the Illinois County Risk Management Trust. It was initially started years ago by a number of mostly the smaller counties in Illinois, and then expanded into other municipal and school entities. They've got a lot of counties, again mostly smaller, although there are some Sangamon County, Champaign County. There are some larger counties. It is a trust. Jim McFedrin has the trust agreement that he's going to review. This would require the county to execute this trust. The biggest difference here, and again, the savings versus where we expect the incumbent to land is $400,000. So there's material difference here. The big difference is that the ICRMT, as I'll call it, only uses IPMG, which is Illinois Program or
Insurance.
Okay.
Program Management Group. They use a different TPA than we do. So we use CCMSI for all of our work comp liability claims and for the safety side of things. For the adjusting side with this new program, we would be having someone else sitting here at meetings talking about the new claims, not the old claims. So Rob and John and Carol and his team would continue to handle all of the open claims, but any new claims would be a separate group of people, and there is no flexibility in that from ICRMT. You're either using their appointed TPA or you're not. You're not in the program. So I think that's a material issue, but it's up to you all to decide the cost benefit there. It's something that we're only making a year commitment to, so there's no long-term commitment to the program. If this is cumbersome or it's not working or we don't like the claim staff, then we've got a year to deal with them and then we move back into something else. So again, we're not final yet, but I wanted to get this in front of you and answer any questions that you might have. From a coverage standpoint, the coverages are comparable. We might need to buy a little bit more limit than we're buying now because of the different structure to pull everything up to where it was. The only real deficiency is on the sexual abuse coverage. Instead of $5 million now, which is shared by a lot of different coverages, for sexual abuse there would be isolated coverage and it would only be $2 million. And we cannot get coverage above that $2 million. And so for the detention facility, that tends to be an issue. Is $2 million enough? I'm comfortable with $2 million. If we could buy more, I would spend some money to buy more, but right now there's no market excess of that to buy. So we don't have any claims in that area over the last 7 to 8 years, so it's not our biggest risk. I'm not necessarily concerned about that versus other things. So if that's the only coverage variance on the negative, I'm comfortable with it. And again, I think everywhere else it's comparable. There are lower deductibles on the property. That's a good thing for us. So there's a lot of benefits to the program overall. But again, it does mean this kind of cumbersome arrangement on the claim side. We'll need 2 claims paying bank accounts, not just one anymore. And it's going to be a little bit more complicated. Questions?
Yeah, how much would we have to spend like to bring the coverage to be comparable in all areas?
You know, I think if you bought a couple million more in the total liability tower, you'd be talking about $40,000. It's about $20,000 per million. So we're not eating up much of that savings really.
Have you talked with any other counties who have used this to see how they work and how it goes?
No, I have not.
I think that needs to be done. I also see in the agreement provisions in regard to special assessments, if they are short of money, I wanna know how that works and whether or not, while it looks like a $400,000 savings, you may get hit with a special assessment that would increase your risk.
As you keep going through that agreement, the agreement changes over years and they've taken out the assessment provision. That's correct.
Yes.
So there's no longer any assessment provision, which is really unusual for an insurance pool like that. Most of them are accessible. They don't do it often because, you know, that's not good business, but it's surprising to me that they're non-accessible. And I'm not sure how that works because they only collect so much money, and if losses exceed what they collect, they are either using their surplus or I don't know what happens with that, but it is not accessible.
So the special assessment provision that's in one of the documents I have isn't in effect anymore?
I think if upon review of the whole document, there are additional revisions to that initial trust agreement that are included in there that later change that.
What about discretion of this trust committee to have input on the settlement or acceptance of claims? Is it still our call or do they control it?
Still your call up until it hits insurance, and then it's theirs. They own the claim then. And you know, and I'll let Tony speak to this, they are hands-on versus some of the insurers you've had in the past are not so hands-on. I'm not a big fan of hands-on. I like it when we get to do our own thing and tell the insurer, this is what we think, this is what we want to do. And other than, you know, some of the issues you had with Tokyo Marine in the past, I like them farther away than closer. I believe that ICR&T will be hands-on on claims that are going to potentially involve their layer of coverage.
You mentioned Champaign County and Sangamon. Is there anyone else in north central Illinois?
I can tell you, the ICR&T program has been around since 1983. They have 425 members. There's 102 counties in Illinois, and they write 63 of them. Like Joe Davies County, they write, I have a whole list here, and I'm happy to share that with the group. They write 158 municipalities, 112 schools, 34 townships, and 29 water and sewer districts.
It's a big program.
It's a very big program.
One other thing I should mention, that in any TPA relationship, when you stop doing business as a total or for a line of coverage, the open claims stay with that TPA in the right model, and then they're going to have to charge something called runoff. So in CCMSI's case, all the open liability and property claims will technically go into runoff. They'll continue to handle them. They'll continue to sit and advise us on those claims, but there's likely an additional cost to do that. Again, not material, not when we're talking about $400,000 plus in savings, but something that we'll be identifying in November as well as that final cost.
I presume we were talking in both situations, both with CCMSI and the current coverages, they're all claims made as opposed to occurrence, so that there's gonna be no issues with gaps in coverage and
The
things?
claims made coverages that exist now are claims made in ICRT, so no issues.
And they've matched the retroactive dates on what you have currently.
And how would going with this entity affect, if at all, our relationship or the need with reference to Tony and the brokerage end?
Yeah, we get to ditch Tony. No, I'm kidding. Tony,
Well, I was wondering that.
Tony is the broker for ICRT. He would continue to do what he's been doing for us since we hired him, so no change.
So he would have the same role, the same function, and in your opinion, might provide the same benefit with them as he would with who we have, which I think everybody's very pleased with their services
Yes.
that we have.
Yes.
I have about 8 or 10 clients right now with the ICRT program as well.
And just to mention that, 20 years ago, we were with ICMRT. We went with them. They gave us a guaranteed 2-year rate on some of the people on the committee were here.
Okay.
After 1 year, they came in and I think their premium was roughly 300,000. They came in and demanded 750,000, even though we had a 2-year guaranteed premium, not great.
Well, that's one of my concerns is that the property number is where all the savings, or the majority of the savings are. There are some now on the liability side, given where our incumbent has landed, but the incumbent has not been negotiated yet. And I think if there wasn't this big property variance, and we went back to them and said, we've got this ICRMT deal, and there's a little bit of difference that they'd pull back a little bit, but it's really all in the property. And you'll remember that it was a year ago's renewal where our property costs really took off, with Travelers citing the, I think Travelers, not Travelers.
As the property
Yeah.
carrier?
Citing the tornado is the reason, and that was still in your loss data. ICRT apparently only uses 5 years, and Travelers is their property provider, and so they're not looking at that year that the tornado's in, and the pricing is much closer to what you had before it went through the roof last year. So, which one of those is right? I don't know the answer to that until we get about a year from now and we see what happens. The thing is, we're not committing to them. And so if they came through with a huge increase next year, we will be prepared ahead of time. We'll go back out to the market, make sure we have alternatives. And I think we've removed the surprise part of that.
Well, one thing, when they came back, Tom, Joe, were you on the committee then? They demanded like 720, I can't remember the exact figures. And I had to threaten them with instructing us to go to another insurance company, and then we'd see them in court and they'd pay the difference between the guarantee of 300 and what we paid.
Yeah, apparently.
Well, then they honored it.
Okay. They have a different interpretation of the word guarantee apparently than the rest of us do. But again, we'll be prepared for that. We're not going to let them drop that on us at any point. Now we don't have a guarantee. So next year, if they say, if this were, let's get LaSalle into our program and we can worry about the pricing being right next year and they raise prices 30%, they'd still be lower than what we have now. But now the tornado's one more year away and maybe we can improve on our property program a year from now. We'll be prepared should they decide to surprise us at the next renewal.
The renewals I have this year with ICRMT, those rates are essentially flat year over year. So they're not gouging anymore. The big difference is inflation and the impact that that's having on property values. That's the big difference this year.
I think their program would take a huge hit if we had a tornado that hit. And there's so many areas where there's concentration of schools, municipalities, and counties all in the program that all have their own limit of coverage. And if you hit a fairly large swath with a tornado, that could be significant to the program. And then it'd be interesting to see how they deal with that. If they spread that amongst everybody and increase everybody's, or they just look at those that had the loss. So, again, those are things we'll be prepared for should they occur. Again, no decision today, decision not until November, but I wanted this in front of you, so I'm happy to answer more questions.
Tom, you have a question?
Are we gonna be caught in 100% of value insuring, or are we gonna be able to pick and then substitute on our own level as to what we wanna go with for the amount of insurance we wanna carry?
You mean like property values?
Right, right, well, yeah, in regard to buildings and so forth, and, you know. I mean, that's,
So
to me, is an option we need to know.
Tony builds the statement of values, it's based on replacement cost. That's what both the incumbent insurers as well as ICRMT propose. There's some slight difference in the property coverages, but not material and not something I'm concerned about. But you have replacement costs for all of your facilities.
So there's no specific dollar amount, is that?
The specific dollar amount is based on what that statement of values says, and that's, I don't know if you bump those values from.
It's actually based upon there was an appraisal that was performed in 2020 for each one of your locations, and that's the basis for the statement of values that we have currently.
But what he's saying in regard to the statement of values, whether you go with some of your present incumbents in that plan, or whether you go with ICRMT for the initial start, there will be no difference.
That's roughly correct. There's some minor differences in how they approach that, but not, it's too deep in the weeds and not material. If I'm reading what you're asking correctly, we don't get to say, you know, we only want to insure this building for 50% of its value. You can't do that anymore in property insurance. They're either, and oftentimes now the insurance market, property market is telling you what you have to insure it for, like the dollar value that they've determined based on a square footage computation, because they feel like over the last 10 years, inflation in construction has been running much hotter than general inflation, and that when we up our values 2 or 3%, that has not caught up to where inflation really was. So in general, property insurers are convinced, I don't know if this is right or wrong, that statement of values is understated and relatively significantly, unless you had a recent appraisal and then you've bumped them by 6, 7, 8% annually after that. So we can't pick and choose what limit we want. Tony builds a statement of values that's based on that initial appraisal plus some inflation, and that's what we present to the insurers.
The other thing that ICRMT does for each of its 450 members is once you're into the program, within, I would say, 4 to 6 months, they pay for, it used to be called Duff and Phelps, but it's now called Kroll. It's an independent appraisal company, and so they would come out and appraise each one of your locations, and then they would continue to do that every 4 to 5 years for each one of its members. And so it's an independent / third party. This is what we estimate your values to be. And if after that appraisal, there's a significant difference in terms of what's reported versus what the appraisal, then we need to have a conversation.
So aren't we then out of the insurance trust business? I mean,
No,
if we're gonna be insuring at 100%, what,
no, you're still self-insured.
at what level? You know,
On the liability side, it's the same level. The property deductible is a little bit lower, but you're still self-insuring liability and work comp. That is not changing.
So the retention that you have now compared to what you have currently with Liberty Mutual on the non-workers comp lines is $250,000 on the casualty, and I think on the property is $50,000. Does that answer your question?
thank you.
Are these the only 2 bids you got, Tony?
No,
ICMT?
Yeah, to dive a little deeper with what's going on in the insurance marketplace. So ICRMT and all the carriers that you're familiar with Liberty Chubb, Liberty Mutual, et cetera. The reinsurers for large catastrophic risk, for obvious reasons, what we've seen, for windstorm, hail, flood, named windstorm, those are all going up in terms of what those insurance carriers are paying the reinsurers. And this county has high exposure to windstorm. Liberty Mutual, for example, can't quote values that exceed, say, $75 million. Yours are far above that with them, and therefore they can't quote it. Chubb, Travelers, and other carriers ask for 10 years, and they see that $4 or $5 million wind loss that you had several years ago, and they decline that for that reason.
The property market is still exceptionally challenging. Florida hurricane's not gonna make it any better, it's gonna probably make it worse.
And that's the question I was, because you look at Florida and the losses there, I mean, it's gonna affect those insurance companies, they're gonna affect everybody.
It's gonna continue to put pressure on property rates throughout the country, for not just for flood and wind, just property rates in general will continue to be on the rise.
In regard to self-insurance, in regard to the retention aspect, is choice of counsel any different under their plan as opposed to what we have now?
It's your money. You do what you want with it. The $250,000. I gave the 2 or 3 law firms that you tend to use to ICRMT, and they have no problem with any of those. If you choose to go that route, I would have an email to them saying this is who we want approved, and make sure that they give it their blessing.
But Jim, if you had an individual claim that had something different than the normal stuff that we've dealt with in the past, and you know a firm, or other people in the county know a firm that's their specialty, then when we file that claim with IPMG, we tell them we're gonna use XYZ because they have expertise in this area, and I would assume no pushback. I mean, they're your partner insurer, and as much as insurers can be a pain somewhere, you know, it's in their best interest to have the right counsel on
We
it.
should be on the same page on those things.
Should be.
And you can always have unique claims that require different attorneys with different specialties. And in the excess area, it presently appears the carriers have to control anyhow, right? It's gonna be in the excess that and I presume that's gonna be similar with
SCRMT, that is true.
Yeah.
If it's a serious claim, law enforcement, legal liability, civil rights violations, et cetera, that they're gonna want to be kept posted as to what's going on. If it's a claim that's within that SIR and should be, that it's gonna be status quo.
because it's not gonna affect their bottom line.
Right, they might assign co-counsel if they feel it's a serious enough claim, but what they really can't do is they can't come to you and say, you can't use that firm, you have to use our firm, especially with the retention of that size. So I don't think there's issues related to that.
Loretta?
How long does this claim that we had for the highway, how long does it stay in our cast? And they use it as
They
a reference?
do use it as leverage. Here's an interesting thing this is what I love about the insurance business, is Travelers would not provide a quote to you on a standalone property basis because they look at 10 years of loss data and the tornadoes in that window. Travelers insures ICRMT. When they insure ICRMT, they only want 5 years, I think, right?
Yeah.
And so it falls out. And this is the same company. It's silly. So every insurer is a little bit different, but generally now they want 10 years worth of loss data. So that's what his hamstrung Tony is, that you can't say, well, I only have 7, and not show them the 8th year. That's really bad. Somewhere that data's out there anyway. They can probably find it. So you've got to give them what they ask for, and most of them are asking for 10 years worth. The fact that ICRMT is only using 5 is unusual, but it's working for us right now.
Mike, if I follow this correctly, IPMG now becomes our CCMSI, basically.
For new liability and property claims only, correct. So, I mean, the knock on wood, your first meeting with them would be the December meeting. And hopefully in that first 3 weeks of December, you don't have any claims, there would be no reason for them to attend the meeting. And, you know, your volume on either property and liability is not significant, so I don't think they're gonna have a material role unless you stay with them for a period of time and you start to build up what Rob and his team are dealing with now, which are a fair amount of claims that span 7 years.
How much do we pay IPM?
You don't have an agreement with them. Again, this is a different structure, so they're contracted with ICRMT.
So that's
That cost is
included in the cost.
That's correct.
Yeah, there's no TPA expense, and to reiterate what Mike said, it's for the life of the claim. And so if there is a claim, they're obligated to manage that claim until closed out. Even if you choose to leave them, they're still on at no additional cost for the trust.
If they're just an insurer, if I know, so why would they not let us have CCMSI?
They're an insurance pool, so they're taking their own risk in addition to what risk you're taking. And it's not uncommon, that approach is not uncommon. Most of the insurance pools throughout the state have a dedicated TPA, often that's CCMSI. And that's the only firm that they'll allow to adjust cases, and the reason being is they want to control the TPA. These are our rules. These are how we want you to handle a claim, and so they tend not to open up to other TPAs. There are exceptions to that, but it's uncommon.
And there's also an economy of scale. So if the 400 some odd members, all that's being managed by a single TPA, then obviously it's more effective to have under one umbrella of provider for that. Same thing holds for the insurance. If they're all similar public entities in terms of exposure to loss, if they have a good handle on managing that for them, they can do it for less money than you can with the standard insurance market.
Anyone have any other questions? Tom?
Will they be placing any requirements on us in relationship to, you know, what we do and how we do it, as far as our buildings and our personnel and so forth are concerned, since this is all in one package and they're gonna step
Yeah,
in?
I think you can actually look at it the other way. In terms of subjectivities to joining the program, there are none. The only thing that they have asked is, do you have resources to help your various departments? They have a lot of experience out there. And so the best practices, they're willing, they want to share with you in terms of how you maybe run more effectively, more efficiently, more safely. We did share with Melissa the law enforcement legal liability. There have been 22 some odd claims over the last 4 years, and that's not indicative of how your department's being run, but that's just more of a state of the union. So they have asked that the group that helps manage risk for their law enforcement exposure, that they come in and meet with the sheriff and other people that are involved in that.
Is there a charge to that or just?
None whatsoever.
Now, what about someone attending safety meetings like we have?
We're still gonna have Laura do that. That's not
Pardon?
we're still gonna have CCMSI and Laura do that. That's not their role here.
So you're saying the only difference is CCMSI will not handle new cases?
Correct.
Which is a significant difference.
Pardon?
It is a significant difference.
And this is all coming at you. You've been able to absorb this for 20 minutes now, and I'm sure that there's a slew of questions and what if scenarios. And so I encourage all those sort of questions, challenges, what if scenarios, and just talk to us about it.
And from the legal, I just wanted to point out, we got Pat Herman's here too, from, who's also with me at Myers and Flowers firm and on the civil end. And part of the reason he is, in addition to the point we knew this would be significant questions this morning, got a heads up on it ahead, is that in all likelihood, I personally will not be able to be here in the November meeting. I'll be in a jury trial. Unless something changes with that.
Mr. Chairman, do you have anything to add or question or? Gary, you have a question?
So terrorism is included or they don't cover?
It's included,
Included in the 642,000.
correct.
So that's all they're taking care of. Like the healthcare, professional, nursing home liability, their own coverage.
That doesn't change, that's the
That
same,
doesn't-
that's right.
So the only real advantage is in the property.
The pricing difference is really almost all in the property. Again, there's some now in the liability side, but those numbers haven't been negotiated with the incumbent yet. Those are new numbers that Tony just got, and in some cases, there's still some estimates in there, which is why I caution you, we still gotta get all this pulled together, and we'll have it ahead of the November meeting for you to look at, but the majority of the premium difference is in the property.
Is there any negotiating with the current carrier on his property?
Well, the property, and going back to a conversation we had a couple of months ago, the property's in the excess and surplus lines marketplace, and it's split among, I think, 4 or 5 carriers, and we're seeing that what you're paying now is a lot more than what ICRMT is. The numbers that we're gonna be getting back from them, I'm estimating between 10 to 12% higher than expired. So to answer your question, no. That the insurance market is such that there's no, in the excess and surplus lines market, it's not, there's no negotiation with these folks right now.
Anyone else have any questions? Gary?
Well, can we raise our limit on property? It's 50,000. What do you put it at $1 million?
You mean the deductible?
Deductible.
I don't know if there's flexibility to do that.
I think there probably is. I think that when you look at raising deductibles, the most effective time to do that is when you have a frequency issue, not when you have a severity issue. You have a severity issue right now, and raising that deductible, if you were having 5 claims a month, that would make a big difference, but you're not. So I'll talk to them about that, and I'll submit it to Mike, and he can share that with the group.
Yeah, the general rule of thumb right now is that insurers and all insurers want the money. And so if you ask them for a higher deductible, they give you back almost nothing. And so those transactions tend not to make a ton of sense. On the liability side, I would argue differently. On the liability side, you want to take as much risk as you can, and you don't want to be counting the dollar difference between this, because you want those insurers as far away as you can get them while you're still comfortable and can afford the risk. Because they'll handle things differently, even underneath 250,000, than you're going to want them handled. So the further away they are, the better off you are. Property, not so much of an issue.
Anyone else? Jim, are you comfortable, are you gonna redo that trust agreement, I mean, the
Right, yeah,
assessment?
I've reviewed it to a degree now, we'll be reviewing it in more detail, we'll have other questions. And I encourage all committee members to ask questions too. And I presume if the main difference in the rates is in the property, I presume there's no option to stay with the CMRT with just the property and stay with the other with the
Yeah,
rest.
I asked that question and the answer was no.
Well, that's a good question, at least for the committee to know that
They won't just take the property.
they won't just take the property.
Correct.
Because that would have allowed us to stay with the other entity
Yeah, it would
very
reduce-
comfortable with for years.
It would have reduced IPMG's role to just property, and those are relatively few and far between.
Well, we have a contract with CCMSI for another year.
And they will continue to manage all the open claims and new work comp claims. So this has nothing to do with work comp. So what you would be looking for in a year is a slight modification to that agreement. And then in between then and now, there's going to be some additional charges, which Rob and I will identify at the November meeting.
Additional charges.
For the liability and the property that are open right now, transitioning into runoff.
Basically a tail.
Yeah, because they're no longer gonna be handling the new ones. The way they price their product is that there's a steady flow and volume of claims, and once you cut off the flow, the finances don't work for them, and it's fair. And so they have to make an additional charge to continue to handle those claims.
Do you have an idea what that would be? I mean,
It's not significant. Well, but Rob and I will work through that, and we'll have it for you.
It'll be reducing. What I mean by that is, as the number of claims dwindle, close out, that cost will go down. That's how the program is set up. It's not gonna be, like a flat rate, if you will. It'll be a per claim to decrease.
But it will cost us to go with the ICMT and then you lose you handling the new claims. There will be an extra cost in you doing the one you're working.
That is correct.
I mean,
I had that conversation with my superiors, Mike and I talked about it.
It's important to know what that is to see what we're really
Sure,
saying.
We're gonna
well,
include
you know
that.
what, we'll have a better idea of that, Marius, a month from now.
All of these costs will be identified in the final report.
I mean,
How long in advance of the meeting you expect to be able to have the final report? You got a lot of balls in the air here.
We can have all of this wrapped up a week in advance, so we'll have something to you a week before the meeting.
I expect from the premium side of things, I think everything should be completely finalized by the end of next week. We have some of these new numbers, and we also need time, like the drone coverage, for example, that went up quite a bit. I wanted to see why. You have an $18,000 new drone that you got a couple of months ago, and that's the reason for the increase. So I'm just asking those sort of questions as to why. And all those numbers will be, complete marketing summary will be given to Mike.
is it necessary to have a meeting before the November meeting to have this presented? To give us more time to absorb everything?
That's up to you.
I would say do that. That would be,
Mr. Chairman, do you have any objection to that?
Pardon?
Would you have any objection to if we ask for another insurance special meeting?
Basically, what you're
Before
talking about, a
November
special meeting before your next regular meeting.
Yes.
To make sure the committee has as much time to consider this important decision as possible.
I mean, I would appreciate that, but,
We'd have to take a look at the schedule.
Pardon?
We'd have to take a look at the schedule and see when we can do that.
I think, how many of you are in favor of that? I think it's necessary myself. Jill?
I just think it's too much information right now
Yeah.
to digest that we need a couple weeks to think about it and then come back again as a group.
Right. So, Tony, when would you have all the information that you could present? You wouldn't have, just so we could meet and get all
Of course,
this.
not all of it, at least as much as possible to allow them to.
Well, I think what you need is the final numbers from each of the carriers that we approach. And I should have all of those numbers by the end of next week. I think I think it would be a good idea to give you a couple of references for other counties that are in the program for you to call before that special meeting.
I think that's what I mentioned right off the bat.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I think too is maybe even a sheriff that's in the program, for example, would be a good resource for the LaSalle County Sheriff to call as well. What's it like working with these guys? How long ago were you with the ICRMT program?
That's when I first started.
Anyone know?
Marius is the one who raised it. He was asking Marius how long ago it was you were in the,
But wait, what were you asking?
How long ago were you in the ICRMT program?
How long ago were we in it?
Yeah.
What did that mean, 2003 maybe? Because that,
Okay.
what happened was after we threatened them with a lawsuit, they came back in and they stuck to the price.
I think they were on it the first couple of years, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then we did not, maybe we didn't do our duty, but since they honored the price, we didn't go out for bid, if you remember the next year. We just assumed we would hire them, and they came in and nailed us about about $700,000 increase, and it was so late, we had no choice but to accept it. And that's when we made the decision to go self-insured.
Well, I think, they understand that you have an obligation to the county to come in with the best program available. And I don't have a problem going out to bid next year as well. That they may be the best price and the best coverage, but let's see what that looks like.
The gentleman that, if I remember his name correctly, was Todd Greer. Is he still with ICRMT?
You have a good memory. He is still with the program. So, but he would not be involved. There's a guy named Bob Spring.
Todd was the gentleman when I had
Okay.
You wouldn't be the first either.
he didn't appreciate me the way what I said, but we got the price for a year, if you remember right.
Yeah. But I think that's just a matter of planning, having the pre-renewal strategy meetings like we've had, and what we want to do to make sure that doesn't, lesson learned, right?
I mean, I know all of us feel strongly about the job CCMSI has done for us, and their reputation in the industry, whatever, and the CCMSI, well.
Oh, I agree 100%.
I mean,
I really do.
But yet, when you put up $400,000, I understand.
Yeah.
But then I just had a bad experience with Todd Greer and that committee did, and I just want to make sure that.
I won't bring him to the meeting.
Pardon me?
I won't bring him to the meeting.
No,
Or it'd be entertaining.
I wish you would.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway, the dates,
If you wanna do an additional meeting, these are our options.
yes, that's, we do want to do an additional meeting, when we can get. You're saying, would you have it feel comfortably sometime between November 1st and 4th, or is that too early?
I think that's too early.
8th and 9th of November.
of course, everything's closed on the 8th.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
election
well,
day.
What do I have right here?
Well, you have 9, I can't.
8th and 10th.
Oh,
So
8th and
if
10th.
we're not doing the 8th, then the 10th, we have the afternoon open here, cause I ran into Tom.
Well, can you have,
Our meeting space is limited, and we're closed on the 11th.
The November 10th possibility, Tony?
Mike?
Yeah.
That would be the week ahead of the meeting, so, cause we're meeting on the 17th.
that date will not work for me. You guys suppose you can't meet on the 8th when the court's closed, or election day? Is that against the rules?
We're here.
Yeah.
We do have a committee meeting at 9 AM
Yeah.
that day, so we are open for business.
I can't do the 8th until later in the day.
We would only be able to do afternoon anyway, because we
Okay.
have a committee meeting in the morning.
Could we do it the 8th and 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Mike, or is that too?
What time are you thinking?
Like, I'm sure.
2 o'clock?
2 o'clock.
What day is that on?
Are you
We
available?
would need to see.
You available on November 8th?
Pat says we can't have a meeting on, well, we've got another one set on that day too, apparently.
We do.
I don't know what should be.
That's a new statute.
Talking about having the committee meeting on the 8th, whether or not it's allowable.
Yeah, it might not be allowable under the
Yep.
statute.
Why is it not allowable?
Well, now you're trying to make sense out of a statute. Sometimes we have an easy time with that and sometimes it's challenging.
Well, aren't all the rest of the offices open that day?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just the judicial is not. So circuit clerk and the judicial side of our
Well-
departments are closed, but everybody else is here. That's the only group that's observing the holiday, from our employee side. And offices that I'm aware of.
And the county clerk's office is closed to the public, but they're here.
Yes.
Correct, but they're doing the elections, correct.
I thought it was a new statute.
They did put a new statute in, what it provides, I don't have any idea as far as what the limitations are. Certainly don't wanna conduct a meeting that would be illegal, we wouldn't do that.
So you're saying, Jim, we can't meet that?
I don't know the answer.
Oh, I'm
That's what I'm saying. That's what
What
I'm saying.
meeting is in the morning that day, Julie?
I couldn't tell you, all I know is I know there is a meeting scheduled that morning.
Is
And
that-
it's because of, the county is closed on Friday of that week. You know, there's a lot of, we have three closings within that month. We have several full board meetings, I think we have 2 full board meetings that month. So we're having a hard time, you know, plugging everything in.
Whenever you have a Pat, one of Pat or myself will be here and, we'll both have talked about it before, whenever you have it, so.
The 8th would be the first Tuesday, or no,
Second.
second Tuesday, right?
So what is that?
So what is that?
License.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I think
Jim said, or excuse me, Pat says he could be here on the 10th in the afternoon, that was one of the days.
So the 8th looks like the date, right? Is that the date, Mike?
No, they have concerns with the 8th.
Yeah, the 8th is
The 8th is
like
election
the
day.
utility afternoon.
Afternoon, but you have another meeting in the morning.
Yes,
Was the 10th available in the afternoon?
yes,
Pat can be
Yes.
here.
the 10th is available,
Yes.
10th,
10th,
10th works.
at noon or 1, whatever.
what time? 1 o'clock?
Whatever works.
Why don't you set it for 1?
1 o'clock,
You can
November
be here,
10th.
right? Thank you, Pat.
That is a Thursday, right?
It is.
A week before the,
It's also a Marine Corps birthday. 237 years, nothing I'm keeping track.
we don't need a motion or anything, do we, Jim, and that just,
Well, you'll have to do a publication to set a
Right,
special meeting,
right.
but,
Well,
you don't need a motion, you can just have a consensus, and as long as you do a appropriate public notice so that the public knows your meeting, like any special meeting requirement, and publish an agenda, then you would have complied with the law.
Amanda will take care of that, so that's what we'll do. Tony and Mike, we'll see you on November
10th.
10th.
And we will get you, we'll have everything to you a couple of days ahead so you have a chance to absorb it.
All right, you
The
know,
more time, the better.
Right.
Yeah, we will admit, yeah, we'll get it out.
All right, anyone else have any further questions then? Okay. We'll move on.
Tony, just one other point, if you have some of those names before you leave, you can leave them with Pat or myself as to.
I don't have them,
Okay,
right now, but, should I give them, just send them to Melissa?
yeah, that's fine, she'll give it to us.
Is that okay, Melissa?
Yep.
Okay.
Did you happen to give that to me already, like a little, was it that full listing of all the entities that are in it, is that what you want?
That didn't have contact information.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Jim, will you be contacting these references before the 10th?
one of us will, Pat or myself will,
Okay.
and we will confer, whichever one of us contacts them, we will confer with each other. And, probably with you as chairman too, Ari.
All right,
And so,
so we're gonna wait on the renewal of the broker agreement then until, is that what we decided? Can we put that on
It
the,
doesn't change the,
okay,
Yeah.
or what, if we go with NCRT.
all right. Jim, you're satisfied it will not change anything?
pardon? I'm sorry, I was getting asked.
Are you satisfied that if and when we do change carriers, that will not affect the broker agreement with?
Based on the representations of Mike and Tony today, it does not sound like whichever direction you proceed in, it will affect in any manner the need or the overall general duties of the broker. And
Okay,
then, so if the committee is satisfied, the proposed agreement is consistent with what we went through last year, but it's up to the committee.
okay, it is on the agenda for, you don't have it for action, do you?
Yes, I believe she
Yeah, I
does.
do.
Yes, she does.
Oh,
Letter C.
right. Does everyone have a copy of the agreement?
No, I,
And let me also indicate to the rest of the committee members, while we might talk, any of you can call Pat or myself at any time regarding this matter, regarding the status if you wish. Our door is always open.
I think you just need to explain that. You need to explain it's just a change in the dates. That's all it is. You're just agreeing that it's a change of the dates on it. It's the only thing that's changing. Is instead of 1 year, it's the last 2 years of the total arbitrary.
It's the same agreement we have with the working group, except that for 2 years. Because the original request for proposal was 3 years, we did it 1 year.
Oh, we're just extending it 2 more years.
We're giving it,
We're just doing the agreement for the last 2 of the RFP, and you want it to come back next year to prove it again. It's the same dollar amount though.
same dollar amount, $38,000 annual fee. This is what we requested a year ago, but we only did 1 year fee. So we take a motion to approve the original fee agreement with the Horn Group
For the additional 2 years.
for 2 years. Motion by Small, seconded by Bernal. Any further questions? If not, then a roll call vote, because we are spending money. Tom?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
All of us right. All right, motion carries.
That's for.
Okay, the next thing we have is the sheriff over the jail. President.
You don't have to do it now. If you wanna, we wanna have it.
We're ready.
All right.
Well, is this gonna be part of an executive session, some aspect if it has to do with?
Yeah, I guess we were. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm sorry.
Because it has to do with, as I understand.
Can we do the budget real quick and then, so.
No, let's do that at the end, because I have to have Stephanie come up.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
don't know if we can get your exec items while that's gonna cover everything, I think, according to.
Yeah, you might as well
Mr.
go in
McFetrich.
once.
We'll just go in once for all
Yeah,
the
we better go
executive.
in now then.
Sure.
Jill, you have the motion?
Make the motion that we go into executive session regarding pertinent provisions of the Open Meeting Act, including 5 ILCS 120/2C1, 11 and 12, regarding the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, and/or dismissal of specific employees and/or classes thereof, pending and/or probable and/or potentially imminent litigation and/or the review or discussion of claims, laws or risk management information, records, data, advice or communications from or with respect to any insurer of the public body or intergovernmental risk management association or self-insurance pool of which this county and the LaSalle County Trust Committee are involved in.
Okay, we need a second.
Who made the motion?
Arnall made the motion, Meyer seconded the motion. All those in favor? Roll call vote, Tom?
Aye.
Joe? Jerry? Jill?
Okay, hold on,
Gary?
Aye.
Okay.
we're not ready yet.